Welcome to Miss Retro Reads. We continue with The Head Girl of the Chalet School. Chapter 3, The Falls of Rhine. Grizel turned sharply at the word and looked at the other girl. What do you mean? She asked coldly. I'm going to have it out with you now. That's all. Joey sat down on the edge of her bed and looked Grizel squarely in the face. Have what out? And I do wish, Joe, you would try to remember occasionally that I am nearly 3 years older than you are. You speak sometimes as if you thought I were as old as the robin. I don't think you are as old sometimes, retorted Joey. You don't behave like it. That will do. Even if we do go away together for the holidays, that's no reason why you should cheek me like that. I'm head girl, remember? I wish you would try to remember it, said Joey fervently. Then her tone changed. Grizel, don't go to the falls. It isn't playing the game by Mamie. If you want us with you, I'll ask if I can go in the summer before I go to Bolsornia with Elisaveta. But her first words had done the mischief, and even this sacrifice had no effect on Grizel, who could be thoroughly wrong-headed on occasion. She now looked at the young girl with an expression of scorn and said, Mind your own business. But Grizel, began Joe. And that will do. I'm not going to be spoken to like that by a mere middle. If you can't talk about anything else, you'd better be silent. Anyway, I don't want to talk to you. You're a bit swollen-headed, Joe. I suppose it's because Madam is your sister. It's a pity, because you could be quite a nice child, if it weren't for that. Joe went white with anger at this unpleasant speech, but she said nothing and went on with getting ready for bed. Grizel followed her example, and they went to bed in utter silence. Joey had a hot temper, and Grizel had said an unforgivable thing just now. Things were at a deadlock. Grizel soon fell asleep, for she was not imaginative, and angry as she was, her emotions were little likely to disturb her rest. Joey, sensitive and temperamental, tossed about restlessly in her bed for 2 hours or more before she finally dropped off. Grizel woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning. As soon as she was sufficiently wide awake to realize what had occurred the night before, slipped out of bed, and with a cautious glance at the bed in the opposite corner, switched on the little reading lamp over her own. Then she dressed herself swiftly and warmly, putting on her thickest things. She had determined to get to the falls of the Rhine somehow, and knew that to do so she must make an early start. She wasn't sure how far Joey's sense of duty might carry her either. That young lady scorned to tell tales, but no one knew better than Grizel that this was a case when she might rightfully feel that she was reporting and not sneaking. Jo slept on soundly and never stirred when the door opened, and her companion slipped out and shut it carefully after her. She slept on till long after her usual time for waking, and indeed until Miss Maynard, wondering at the unusual quiet in their room, came along to see that they were all right. In the meantime, Grizel, her head held very high, ordered hot coffee and rolls for herself at the reception desk, and consumed them when they came in as airy a fashion as if she were not doing things she knew very well to be wrong. In the meantime, Grizel, her head held very high, ordered hot coffee and rolls for herself at the reception desk, and consumed them when they came in an airy fashion, as if she were not doing something she knew very well to be wrong. To the kellnerin who served her, she said that she was going on to the falls by the early train, and the others would join her later. She felt pretty safe in saying that, for she knew that Miss Maynard, at any rate, would come to seek her, and she had no intention of hiding from her once she had got her own way. She had made inquiries the night before, and had found that there was 2 hours between the train by which she intended traveling and the next one. By that time, as she reckoned, she would have seen all she wanted to see, and would be quite content to come home. She finished her meal, and then set off from the Bahnhof. Basel, a very old and picturesque city, and the long streets with their quaintly gilded and frescoed houses had reminders as at every corner of the time when Basel was one of the great university towns of Europe. When Grizel reached the Baden-Schinsbahnhof, she found that she had just time to get her ticket for the falls. It was still dusk, and mist lay low over everything. Grizel felt in her satchel for her book and settled down for a good read. People passing the compartment to which she was seated looked curiously in at her. In Switzerland, a young girl of upper classes no more roves about by herself than her sister in other European countries does. There is a great deal of freedom, it is true, but la jeune fille is well chaperoned for all that. To see a girl of 17 quite without a relative or a maid to look after her was unusual. When the daylight finally came, with bright wintry sunshine, Grizel put aside her book to look at the view, without any idea that she had aroused such interest. She found the landscape uninspiring on this cold morning, when everything was covered with snow, and there were no mountains such as she loved. The railway here runs through the Rhine Valley, which is low-lying, and only shows gentle undulations till it nears the environs of Zurich. It is a fairly populous valley, but Grizel was bored with the towns, and she soon lost interest in them and returned to her book. But this, too, seemed to have become dull, and so she took refuge in her thoughts. She wondered what they were saying at the Basel. She could imagine Joey's indignation when she woke up and found herself alone. Miss Maynard would be furious, of course, and the robin would be full of wonder. It wouldn't be a pleasant journey back to Innsbruck. For the first time, Grizel began to repent her daring. After all, her idea at first had been to have Joey with her, and here she was, alone. If Joe hadn't been so emphatic, she would have left it alone. And then she pulled herself up short. It wasn't playing the game to blame Joey. Grizel rather prided herself at being fair. It was rather unfortunate that she had got on to that track, for now a doubt came into her mind as to whether she was playing fair anyhow. Miss Maynard would be worried, she knew, and after all, she was head girl. Suddenly she sat bolt right up. An awful thought had struck her. What if Madame, who still had a good deal to do with the school, should think that since she had gone off in this mad way, she wasn't fit to be head girl? Grizel's eyes widened in horror at the idea. If it were so, she could never stay on at the school. Everyone knew that she had been chosen, and the disgrace of being degraded would be more than she could endure. The slowing down of the train warned her at this point that they were nearing a station. She would get out and go back at once. With Grizel, to think was to act. She collected her things in double-quick time, and when they drew up by the platform at Waldshut, went along the corridor and descended the little steps and made for the barrier. There she had no easy time of it in explaining to the ticket collector why she had got out at a place 24 miles before the destination marked on her ticket. At first he thought that she had made a mistake and got out thinking she was already at the falls. Her bungling explanation that she had forgotten something, so she had, roused deep suspicion in his mind. However, he could see nothing for it but to let her go, and told her when the next train back to Basel was. She found she had a 40-minute wait before her, and the snow had begun to fall again. She decided to go out and find a patisserie and see if she could get chocolate and cakes. She went out into the street, feeling rather forlorn, and after losing herself twice, managed to find a shop. She had spent so long over finding it that she had to hurry and scalded her mouth with the hot chocolate. Then it was helter-skelter back to the station, where she only just caught her train. and had to find a seat in a crowded compartment with 2 or 3 voluble Swiss ladies who talked the whole time of old Curé, who read his breviary industriously, and the 2 youths of school age, who were obviously German, and who stared at her unceasingly, and made remarks about her and giggled to each other. Of all the uncomfortable journeys she had ever taken, that struck Grizel as the worst. It seemed a never-ending age before she saw that they were nearing Basel, and then she could have cried with relief. As soon as the train drew up inside the station, she was out of it and off through the streets, where the snow was now whirling down as hard as she could go. At length she turned into the Sternengasse, where their pensions was, and made her best pace along it. The doors were shut, of course. She had to wait while the porter came to open them. When he saw her, he exclaimed in surprise, but Grizel was past minding that. She pushed past him and along to the stairs, where she was met by the manageress, who was coming down. At the sight of the English girl, she stopped with uplifted hands. "Fräulein Cochrane, but das Fräulein has gone to seek thee at the falls." "Well, I'm here," said Grizel. "Where are the other 2? Frau Betz looked at her severely. "Fräulein Bettany and das Liebling have gone too. Fräulein Menard said that they would go straight to Innsbruck from the falls once they had found you. They have taken the luggage, all of it." Fräulein Menard was very angry, as in truth she had every right to be. She said she would not feel happy till she had you all safely with your relatives. They have been gone these 2 hours. Grizel sat down limply on the stairs. She had got herself into a nice mess. If she had had any sense, she would have wired them from Waldshut, and then no one would have gone chasing off after her. As it was, she had no idea what to do or where to go. She did the best thing she could have done for herself. Worn out, remorseful, and hungry, she forgot her pride and burst into tears. At the sight, Frau Betz, who was a good-natured soul, forgot her indignation and hastened to apply comfort. "Hush, mein Kind, you are wearied and must rest. Fritzi shall hasten to the post office and send a telegram to the station at the falls to say that you are here. You shall have a meal, and we will send you to them there. Come to my room." She led the tearful girl to her own little sitting room and made her lie down on a sofa, and then she came with a tempting little meal on a tray. And after the girl had eaten all she could, she sent the long-suffering Fritzi out once again to seek a car. Into this she packed Grizel, seeing that she was warm and comfortable, and then she went back into the pension, shutting the door firmly behind her. Oh, that weary journey! Grizel couldn't fix her mind on her book, for she was too worried over what Frau Betz had said about Miss Maynard's anger. She positively shivered when she learned that they were nearing Nauhausen, the station for the falls, and for a moment she felt as if she would have preferred to stay where she was. However, cowardice was not one of Grizel's faults, so she pulled herself together and left the train as bravely as she could. At the other side of the barrier she saw Miss Maynard waiting for her, a very grave Miss Maynard, who made no comments, good, bad, or indifferent, on her behavior, but simply bade her hurry up and get into the sleigh that she had hired. Grizel did as she was told in dreary silence, and no word was spoken till they reached the hotel. There she was bidden to get out and go in at once. In the vestibule she waited till Miss Maynard joined her, and still in the terrifying silence led her to the room where Joey and Robin awaited them. At sight of Grizel, the Robin ran forward, but Miss Maynard stopped her. "No, Robin, not yet. Take off your things, Grizel. Put them on the sofa for the time being. Now I want an explanation of your conduct. Grizel stood there, twisting her fingers together. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry, she said. I hope you are, said Miss Maynard, still in that grave, cold voice. You have given us all, Frau Betts, Joey, and myself, a very anxious time. You have given us needless trouble and added to our length of the journey. If there's anything that will serve as an excuse for your conduct, I want to hear it. Grizel stood there, fighting desperately with her tears. Joey saw it and braved the mistress's wrath. Grizel, she said, I honestly didn't mean to put your back up. If it was what I said made you do it, it's my fault as much as it was yours. It was a way out, but Grizel had her code and she stuck to it. It was my own idiocy, Joey, she said, but I expect it was my being so beastly about it that made you go on and do it, urged Joey, whose soft heart couldn't bear to see Grizel look so unhappy. Word of honor, Miss Maynard, I'll bet it was me as much as anything. You know what I am. Miss Maynard looked at her. Yes, Joey, I know. But Grizel? She got no further, for Grizel interrupted her. It wasn't really Joey at all. I wanted to go, so I went. It's like that time I went off to climb the Terjok. You'd think I'd have learnt my little lesson from that, but I haven't. I'm awfully sorry, Miss Maynard. I simply didn't think. I know I'm not fit to be head girl now. Oh, tosh, said Joey. Of course you are. Manie, we'll forgive you, 'cause you're so sorry. Won't you, Manie? Miss Maynard shook her head. It's not so easy as all that, Joe. As Grizel herself says, if she can go off like this for a mere whim, then she isn't fit to be head at the chalet. We've got to feel we can depend on our head girl at school. Well, you will on Grizel after this, declared Joey. Anyhow, this isn't school time, it's holidays, so do let it go at that, won't you? I'm sure Madge would. Do you think so? Asked Miss Maynard with a smile. Yes, she's always trusts us to carry on and do our best. Look at the time she forgave me for doing mad things. I shall have to tell her, said Miss Maynard, taking a sudden decision. It will lie in her hands, Grizel. Meanwhile, we had better go and have café. Our train goes at 6, and I want to see about 1 or 2 things. As far as I am concerned, the thing is shelved for the moment. Luckily, the Romid created a diversion by flinging herself on the girl. Pauvre Grizel, she murmured. Grizel picked her up and hugged her, thankful to hide her face among the black curls for a minute or two. When she looked up again, Miss Maynard had gone off to see the manager about café and a picnic basket, for they would not get into Innsbruck till the next day. Nothing further was said, and they embarked on the last part of their journey very peacefully. Chapter 4. Home Again. Innsbruck at last! What ages it seems since the tunnel. Buck up, Robinette. We're nearly in. Pack up, Grizel. We're almost there. Oh, hurrah for dear little Innsbruck and Madge. It was Joey, of course. The rest of the party got their things together in more orderly fashion, while she hung out the window, talking and gesticulating wildly as the great train swept through the suburbs of Innsbruck and finally slowed down by the platform. Standing waiting on it was a slight, graceful girl. She looked no more, clad in long green coat with big fur collar turned up, and a soft green hat. Her face was flushed with excitement, and as her dark eyes encountered the wildly waving Joe at the window, they glowed with welcome. As the train stopped, Joey made a wild dive along the corridor and nearly fell down the steps into her sister's arms. Madge, Madge, it's wonderful to see you again. It's splendid to see you, Joey, replied the voice she loved better than any other sound in the world. You've grown again, you monkey. You're as tall as I am now. Madge Russell looked with a smile at the clever, sensitive face on a level with her own, and then turned to greet the others. Robin, my little Cecilia Murray, have you had a good time? The Robin clasped tightly at the arms that had come to take the place of her mother's, tucked her curly head into Tante Marguerite's neck, and squeezed her rapturously. "Oh, so nice, Tante Marguerite. Bien amie. I do so love you." "Well, leave a little of me for the others, my pet," laughed Mrs. Russell as she set the little girl down and turned to greet Miss Maynard and Grizel. The latter flushed under the welcoming kiss, but her ex-head didn't notice it, for she was shaking hands with Miss Maynard and asking questions as to their journey. "Did you have a good time, Molly? Decent fellow travelers? We just got back from Vienna 2 days ago. It was so jolly. We stayed with the Von Ecknews, and they are back again. And I've got some news for you all. Wanda is betrothed." "Who to?" demanded Joey as they all moved to the barrier. "A young officer in her father's regiment." "Gee, how priceless. Fancy Wanda engaged. That makes 2 of our girls old already. First Gisela and now Wanda. When's she to be married?" "In the summer. I met him while we were there, and he is a charming young man. He adores Wanda, and she him, so I think they will be very happy." Madge Russell, happily married herself, smiled reminiscently. "You will hear all about it from Maria when term begins." She was wildly excited about it. "Wanda is very sweet, and is longing for the spring to come. They mean to pay us a visit at Brassandin. She wants to show him her English school." Joey sighed. "It's awfully nice for them, of course. I mean Gisela and Wanda, but it does seem as though we were all growing up frightfully quickly. Don't you think they are too young, Madge?" "Gisela is 20 and Wanda is 19. At least we shall have Gisela fairly near us. I'm so glad Gottfried Minch decided to join Jem at the Sonalp. I shall like to have my first head girl living next door, so to speak." She smiled at the new head girl as she spoke, but Grizel looked very grave. She was wondering whether she would be allowed to follow in the footsteps of Gisela Marnie now. Luckily, the robin tugged at Mrs. Russell at that moment, so that the girl's expression passed without comment for the moment, though Madge Russell had noticed it and wondered what it meant. Tante Guito. The robin sometimes abbreviated the longer name this way. "Are we to stay with Onkel Ries and Tante Gretchen?" Madge laughed at the Uncle Giant, a name of Joey's bestowing on the kindly father of 2 of the Chalet School girls, who had been a great friend of theirs ever since the school had been opened. And then she nodded. "Yes, littlest and best. They would have come to meet us, but they thought I should like you to myself at first." "Where's Jem?" asked Joey. He had to go back to the Sanalp at once, explaining his wife as she tucked the robin into the big sleigh which was awaiting them in the Baunhof Platz, and which they had reached by this time. "He's looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow. You are to come to us for the rest of the week, you know." "Good." Joey heaved a rapturous sigh, and then sank down into her corner of the other side of her sister. "Has Mademoiselle come back yet?" asked Miss Maynard as she took her seat facing them, with Grizel by her side. "Yes, she arrived yesterday. Simone is with her, but Renée has a sprained ankle, so Madame Lecture is keeping her at home till half-term. Then she will bring her and see the school for herself. Cozy, Robin?" "Yes, thank you," replied the robin, slapping her hand into the slender one at her side. "Tante Marguerite, have Gisela and Gottfried arranged for their wedding yet?" "Yes, that's another piece of news for you. But Gisela was to be at Maria Hilf, so I am going to leave her to tell you all about it. She wants you 3 to be her bridesmaids, with Frida and Maria, I know. Wanda is to be married in August too." "Shall we go to Wien for that?" asked Joey anxiously. "I hope it won't be late, or it will cut up my time with Elisaveta. Have you any idea of the date, Madge?" "It will be during the first week," said Mrs. Russell. As for cutting up your visit to Belsorna, Elizaveta will be there too, and I expect you will go back with her. At least the king said so when he wrote to me and told me about it. That's good. I suppose Wanda will have a very swish wedding. Where will Gisela be married, do you think? In the Hofkirche? Madge refused to comment herself. By this time they were driving down the Friedrich Herzog Strauss, making for the bridge, where Maria Helf is a suburb across the river. Joey looked out at the busy streets where the sleighs were going about, crunching the crisp snow under their shining runners and filling the air with the silvery jingle of bells. The celebration of Christmas and New Year's were over, but the shop still had a happy appearance. The snow lay thick on the ground and the steep roofs, and gave what the English girls were wont to call a Christmas card air in the town. It was early afternoon, but some of the shop windows were already lighted up. They turned down the Marktplatz, and in a few minutes they were going smoothly along by the side of the inn, which lay still and black under its coating of ice. Across the fine stone bridge they turned, and then they drove up the long Mehrhofstrasse to the door, where two tall, pretty girls of 20 or thereabouts were standing eagerly waiting for them. "Here at last!" exclaimed the taller and fairer of the two as the sleigh stopped, and Joey scrambled out to be seized and kissed warmly by both. "And our little bird, how well thou art, mein Blümchen!" The robin, well accustomed to the endearment, held up her face to kiss before she ran into the house and began to skip up the stairs. It was a long way up, for the Minch's flat was on the 3rd floor. At length she was there, and springing into the arms of the slight girl of 15, Frida was much smaller than the rest of her family, typically German, and long flaxen plaits on her shoulders, blue eyes, and an apple blossom skin. She was very pretty, though by no means as attractive-looking as her elder sister, Bernhilda, with her corn-colored hair in a coronal of plaits round her head, was charming enough to have stood for one of the princesses in Grimm's tales. A door opened at Frida's joyful exclamations, and Frau Minch, very fat and very fair, like her daughters, rolled out and caught the visitors in a close embrace. "But how we have missed you all, my children! There seemed to be something lacking in our joy this Christmas. Die Großmutter has wearied for your return. She is in the salon now. Come, my children, and greet her." She led the way to the long, narrow salon where a tiny old woman, Herr Manch's mother, was sitting by the big white porcelain stove. Old Frau Minch was only 2 years short of her century. She was very frail, but her eyes still snapped vividly, and she made herself felt in the little household. Joey went up to her, curtsying first in the pretty old-fashioned way the old dame liked, and then offering her hand. The robin followed her example, but she was kissed and crooned over. Then Frau Minch, the younger, Tante Gretchen, as the girls had learned to call her, swept them all off for the meal, which she was sure they needed after their journey. Joey heaved a sigh of joy as she settled down to a bowl of soup and a big slice of rye bread. "English food's all very well," she said, "but I love what we have here. I used to get so bored with the white bread. I love this." She took a large bite out of her slice and beamed on them all. "Joey, you needn't act so much like a little pig," said her sister severely. "Even if you are glad to get back, I think you might have a little less to say about your food. Was she like this in England, Grizel?" She purposely included the elder girl in the conversation. That there was something wrong with Grizel was evident to anyone. Now, as the girl shook her head, she bit her lips. What could be the matter? However, it was no time to ask questions now, so she turned to Miss Maynard, with some idle remark about the journey. Quite simple, was the answer. Paris was delightful, and we had a good time seeing the shops at Basel. I thought you meant to stay longer, said Mrs. Russell. Why did you leave it so soon? It was pouring with snow, said Joey hastily. You never saw anything like it. If it's going to be bad weather, it's best to be home, I think. Madge frowned, and then she decided to say nothing, though Joe's rudeness in bursting in like that on her conversation with Miss Maynard was both unusual in her and outrageous. As for Grizel, she had no more to say, but ate her soup and bread and drank the coffee which Brunhilde set before her. When the meal was over, the girls went off together for a chat, and the robin, who was sleepy, was tucked up on the sofa to take a nap. Frau Minch had some household task to see to, so she went out, leaving the other two together. After excusing herself, she had barely closed the door behind her when Madge Russell turned eagerly to the others. Molly, what's the matter? What happened at Basel? I'm sure something did, or you would never have come off so suddenly. Why on earth did you go to the falls at this time of year? I got the shock of my life when I got your wire from there saying that you were going back at once. And what's wrong with Grizel? Miss Maynard frowned. It's difficult to tell you, my dear. Yes, Grizel has been as mad as usual. I thought she was cured of wanting to go off on expeditions on her own, but evidently she isn't. As for the falls, it was for her doing we went there. She ran away to see the falls of Rhine yesterday, without saying anything about where she was going, though she and Joey had a battle royal over it in the night before. Joey seems to think that it was partly her fault and that Grizel went off as she did. There may be some truth in it. It's quite possible she did say something that put Grizel's back up. At the same time, Grizel has no excuse for going off as she did. If it hadn't been for what Joe was able to tell me, I shouldn't have known where she had gone. Then, when she was halfway there, the silly child seems to have repented and turned back, without wiring to let us know that she was returning. The result was that I packed up and took the other two off to the falls to seek her, and was met on the platform by a wire from Frau Butz, saying that Grizel was there and asking what they were to do. I wired them to send her on by the next train. She was very penitent, I must say, and has behaved very well since then. But honestly, my dear, I think we shall have to reconsider making her head girl. It seems to be impossible to place the smallest reliance on her. Madge sighed. Poor child. That's what's wrong with her, of course. She's dreading being degraded. I can't decide yet, Molly. It's altogether too big a thing. And it's quite true that Jo can be horribly tactless when she is roused. I wish I knew what to do. She got up and began to pace backwards and forwards. Miss Maynard watched her. She saw the difficulty, but she was not blessed with much imagination, and she did not know Grizel as well as the ex-head did. To her way of thinking, it would be very unwise to risk having such a girl as head girl of the school. It's hard luck on Grizel, she agreed, but what else are you to do? I can try her again, said Mrs. Russell. My dear, how often have we done that already? Grizel has always been a problem. The trouble with Grizel is that she had far too much authority over her for 4 years. The second Mrs. Cochrane has always resented her existence, you know, and she scarcely allowed the child to call her soul her own. I think it's that which makes her difficult at times now. And when I am tempted to be angry with her and deal strictly with her, I remember that. But other children are made to be obedient, Miss Maynard reminded her. Where would you find a parent who accept more unquestioning obedience than the Marneys? The Munches are very strict. But Gisela and Marie have been taught the most unquestioning and absolute obedience, and it's the same with most of our girls, the continental ones at any rate. I like it better than the calm disregarding of orders that one gets nowadays from children. So do I, returned her friend. The trouble is that Grizel was thoroughly spoilt by her grandmother for 5 years before her father's second marriage. And then, though our girls have been taught to obey on the word, they aren't nagged at. That's bad for anyone. And it is Mrs. Cochrane's chief failing. Well, what are we to do? I know that she expects to be degraded. If you think we ought to try her again, I'm quite willing. Only I do hope she learnt her lesson this time, and will play no more such wild pranks. I cannot see how any girl of 18 can be so mad. Mrs. Russell nodded. I know, but it's just Grizel. I will have a talk with her and see what she says. Of course, we must consult Mademoiselle. Then, if you and she agree, I think we must give the girl a last chance. I don't want to degrade her. That sort of thing sticks, and it might harm her more than it would do her good. The door opened at that moment and Grizel came in. She had slipped away from the others and had come to learn her fate. Has Miss Maynard told you, madame? She faltered. Told me what? Asked Mrs. Russell. About my running away to the falls. I know it was a mad thing to do, but I wanted to see the falls of the Rhine so much, and I didn't think. Miss Maynard got up and left the room. She felt that it would be easier for Grizel to make her confession if she were alone with the head, for so they all thought of Mrs. Russell. Yes, Grizel, she has told me. I'm very disappointed in you. Grizel's lips quivered. I'm awfully sorry, madame. I just didn't think. That's the trouble with you, Grizel, said Madge gravely, as she drew the girl down on a chair beside her. You don't think, and so you give everyone endless trouble. Do you think that a girl like that ought to be our head girl? Grizel shook her head. She couldn't speak, for she was fighting desperately for self-control. I want you to have another chance, said Mrs. Russell quietly. Miss Maynard and I are going to talk it over with Mademoiselle. If she agrees, we will try you for this term. But remember, Grizel, if we do, it will really be your last chance this time. I dare not hurt the school for the sake of one girl. She dismissed the girl after that, but Grizel went away happier than she had come. She knew that kind-hearted Mademoiselle Lapatre would agree to giving her this chance. We will continue this book next Wednesday. Thanks for listening to Miss Retro Reads.